So I mentioned that what was remarkable about FDR was his ability to communicate a clear message to the American people of recovery. Within that clear message, I would argue, however, there is something more interesting going on. There's a shifting of worldviews that FDR wants to encourage among the American people. There's a lot like the same shifting of worldviews that you see in Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. Are the issues that we're dealing with issues that are spiritual in nature? Do the issues that we're dealing with in the Great Depression amount to a fight, a struggle between good and evil? And the answer FDR gives is no, that there are issues that we can deal with, that we can look at in a clear-sighted way, and that we can come up with human solutions to human problems. So now I want to direct you to one of his more famous speeches titled the Commonwealth Club speech that he delivers in 1932, in which he outlines his worldview and he gives us a clear estimation of how he views the role of the administrative state to turn things around. So let me turn you to the beginning of this reading that starts on page 1170 and read carefully and deliberately with me here and go back in your notes and actually try to understand what he's saying here. So at the beginning of the speech, he says, "I want to speak not of politics, but of government. I want to speak not of politics, but of government. I want to speak not of parties, but of universal principles. They are not political, except in that larger sense in which a great American once expressed a definition of politics, that nothing in all of human life is foreign to the science of politics." So I want to talk about government, not politics, and I want to talk about the science of politics. And he says the following, top of page 1171. "The issue of government has always been whether individual men and women will have to serve some system of government or economics, or whether a system of government and economics exists to serve individual men and women." I want to read that again. "The issue of government has always been whether individual men and women will have to serve some system of government or economics, or whether a system of government and economics exists to serve individual men and women." Note what FDR has done at the beginning of the speech. He's completely flipped our notion of what government exists for. If you go back to John Locke's idea in the Second Treatise of Government, and you go to the Declaration of Independence, what is government? Government is there to secure our natural rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Most of our existence, Locke argues, and Jefferson seconds, is an existence in which we are given natural talents by God, we're placed in certain circumstances, and we labor within nature to acquire things that make our life better. We work against those elements of life that make life difficult by working hard. And why do you have a government? We have a government at the end of the day that preserves the rule of law and secures your right to your liberty, your pursuit of happiness, and your property. Well, now FDR has told us that really isn't the role of government. The role of government is to serve you. And the better way that it can serve you is by assuming an amount of power that it didn't have in 1932. To assume that power means that it will be better able to serve you because it will be able to manipulate the economic institution that's in place to better your livelihood. So instead of turning to government as a securer of your natural rights, you'll turn to government as a provider of your way of living. So government goes from being kind of a negative force in that it negates someone trampling upon your rights to being a positor of rights, a positor of goods. And a lot of the legislation that we're going to see and a lot of the legislation that he covers in this speech dealing with government and politics suggests just that in the past we've looked at strong central government as a bad thing, as a thing to worry about. We've looked at it as tyrannical, like the King of England was tyrannical back at the founding of our country. But we really need to turn upside down our understanding of government, and we need to embrace government as a good thing. Think of all the good that government can do, FDR argues, if we give it the power to be able to create that good. It can intervene on behalf of those who have less money. It can intervene on behalf of those who have less skills. It can intervene on behalf of those who have been held down by others. Over and over and over again, if you give government this great amount of power, what it can do is it can reverse the injustices that are within society. So, a new worldview brought into being, one that many Americans in the 1920s might have rejected when they were living in roaring times and enjoying buying a car and buying a house and going on vacation and doing all the things that people like to do in a consumerist economy. But in the 1930s, when you're struggling, right, to get your daily bread, and someone comes along and says, I, as a leader of this administrative state, I'm going to put government to work for you so there's food on your plate, so there's shelter over your head, you're going to be more likely in that 1930s depressive environment to embrace that notion of what government ought to be doing. And that's exactly what happens in 1932. It's exactly what happens in 1936. It really is the defining experience of how we view government and the people it serves.